Greetings viewers, EricTheCarGuy here. Check out what I got behind me. It is a Subaru and it's not mine. It's a 2007 Outback, belongs to a friend of mine, and it's got a couple of issues. But in this video we are going to address one of the main issues, which is a noise when you go over bumps as you're driving along. Sounds like it's coming from the rear. So let's go through the process of, once again, finding a noise in the rear of this 2007 Subaru Outback. All right, well, let's start by taking this thing for a drive. Now, I've placed you in the back in the area where I believe the noise is coming from so that you can hear it the best. I'm gonna find some bumpy roads. Yeah, I don't know if you heard that or not, but there was kind of a knocking and sort of a squeaking that went along with it. Sounds like rubber bushing like that's failed. All right, now I'm gonna be honest, I didn't know exactly where this noise was coming from, and I had to spend a little bit of time to try to track it down, and I believe I have tracked it down. Rather than going through that whole process in this video, I'm gonna post the link in the description to the Finding Suspension Noises video, and pretty much I employed the techniques in there to find out what I believe to be the problem. But it lies back here, and this is the other thing you might be a little upset with me about, is I did not document the process of taking the back end of this car apart. So let's see what we got. As you can see, I've removed some stuff in the back here, this back panel, and this is this takes a bit of doing. But where I believe the noise to be coming from is right here, which is where the rear strut mounts to the body back here. And I've actually taken the strut off and put it back on to try to make this noise go away, but I was unable to do that because you know, these struts aren't difficult to get off, but they are difficult to get on. But there's a mount up here at the top that I believe is failed, and that's what's causing our noise. So now we're gonna lift the vehicle up and remove this rear strut and replace this upper strut mount and see if our noise has gone away. Okay, here's our prize, the strut. It's not leaking or anything. It shows no sign of external damage, any of that kind of stuff. My concern is up here at the top where it mounts the vehicle. But in order to get to that, we have to get it off. Now, actually coming off isn't so bad. Going back on is a little more difficult. There's a through bolt that runs through this lower control arm. And by the way, this is actually what I did was I lifted back here up under where this lower control arm mounts, for those of you that are wondering how I jacked it up. But anyway, there's a bolt, runs through here, 19mm on both sides. This bolt has to come out in order to get the strut out. One of the things that I learned during this process, as I did before, was that it's a real good idea to support underneath this strut. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna take my jack and, well, actually, no, I'm not gonna do that yet because I wanna be able to get my impact in there to remove that bolt. It's not going anywhere because, as I said, it's a through bolt. A little bit awkward getting in here, but I can just do it. There you go. Like I said, this through bolt part stays in there. I'm just going to stick this someplace nice. And by the way, from here on out, we're wearing safety glasses. So I'm just going to lift up a little bit around here, but I want to have it so that I can still knock the other side of the bolt out. I'm going to give you a better view of that if I can. I'm just catching up under the edge of the strut. And actually you can hear, as I lift up, that noise a little bit. All right, so now that's supported, I'm just gonna knock that bolt out. Okay, what I'm gonna use is a long drift punch and my hammer. And even then it went flying. So obviously keep your fingers away. Keep your fingers away from all this area here. Because it might get ugly, but now that it's all undone. Another thing that is probably a good idea is to lift the other side of the vehicle. What I'm doing now, because I have one side up in the air and one side compressed, is it puts the stabilizer bar into a bind, so it's forcing the suspension to compress or try to go the other way. That's kind of its job. But there's no damage to the bolt or the strut or me, so let's get the upper mounts off and get that strut out of there. We need to remove these two 14mm nuts from the top of this assembly. What's going to happen when I do that is the strut is going to want to drop down. So I'm going to reach in underneath and grab it so that it doesn't just fall down on the ground. I'm reaching down to grab hold of it. All right, let's drop this guy out and take a look at our prize. There it is, and that is what I believe to be the issue. All right, back over at the bench. We'll take our strut assembly. Put it in a vise here. I'm not going to squeeze this a bunch because, well, you can damage it. I just want to hold it in place. You remember from like the spring replacement videos. Luckily this is a rear spring. Rear springs don't have the same tension as front springs do, but still, they require your respect. And my spring compressor setup is, well, it could be better. But instead of trying to grab a coil, I'm actually going to go up underneath the strut right here, because all I'm looking to do is remove this top portion. And I want to try to get as many coils as possible and grab here. Because I don't want to interfere with these tabs when I'm coming down in with the... Okay. Now something I didn't show in the last video, which I wish I did, was my cheap setup here doesn't have the little hooks that some of these have, and I advise that you use them, but you can also, at least to some degree, use these zip ties to hold these in place. It ain't 100%, but it's better than nothing. And this will just help hold these in place so they don't come apart like they have in other videos. Now, like I said, these aren't 100%, but they'll help keep the spring compressor from going from side to side while I compress the spring. And I don't need to do a whole lot. I just need to do enough to get this upper mount off. So I'm just going to draw it up. I'm going to keep an eye on everything, go evenly one side to the next, and just sort of try to keep myself out of the way. And you can already see what the issue is here with this breaking away up on the top. I'll give you a close-up of that after I get the whole thing apart. But spring is compressed. This is a 17mm nut on the top here. Something to watch out for is as you take this off, this strut might start to spin. And if it does, I add a little bit of tension and hope for the best. But I don't like to use the Allen screw on the inside. That's actually really difficult in my opinion. But 17 millimeter on the top. And right here is our issue. You can see that the cup here has come right out of the center of this. Here's our new part that we can compare it to. You can see that that's solidly mounted. So the noise that we were hearing was this upper strut piece just sort of moving around up in the top here. Now my new part has come with a new ring for this spring up the top, but it actually feels like the stock one is more malleable than this. This one's really hard. And since I know that my problem was actually in here, I'm just going to replace this piece. And I'm going to save the other piece just in case. You can actually see where the rubber came right apart on this. And normally I'd be doing both sides here, but my friend Tom is looking to save a few bucks, and we're just going to fix what's broken today. But if you've got this on one side, there's a good possibility the other side's the same way. I informed him of the amount of work that it would take in order to get to this other side, and he was cool. So this is what we're going to do. It's quite literally going to be this simple. And something that I probably should have noted before I got started here was the orientation of how this actually sat on here, because when we put this back in, we want to make sure that the bolt down here lines up. So I'm just going to set this on here again real quick, see if I can get an idea of how it was sitting. And that's going to be reason 2 why I'm not going to replace this, because you can actually see the witness marks here. I'm going to bring you over here and show you. Okay, you can see the witness marks where the lower part of this was making contact right there. Now with the new part, I won't be able to see that. And same is true for over on this side, where you've got those little marks as far as where this was resting, this lower part of the stud. So I'm going to use that to locate my new part, and we will go from there. One thing I'll do before I stick that down on there is I'm going to take, yes, EricTheCarGuy's favorite silicone paste. I will once again post the link in the description for you where you can find this stuff. I'm just going to put a little bit on the top of this. This way, if I absolutely have to do a little bit of twisting on it in order to get the bolt to line up, I'll have that leeway. There was a washer, and I am going to reuse the old fastener. A lot of good that did locating that. We can still spin it around to where it gets into the right spot. And as far as like doing this without air tools, I honestly don't recommend it. And part of the reason is because this stuff doesn't like to be torqued. So if you're trying to twist on these things by hand, that's where you create this recipe for disaster for these things to move. But the impacting motion is pretty central, and it holds it kind of in the same place. So that's just what I prefer. And that's something I'd like you to be aware of if you want to try to attempt this with hand tools. You may not be as successful should you decide to do that. Yeah, I think I'm good. So I'm going to relieve the tension on my spring compressor and do it just like I did, just the opposite. I'm going to do one side at a time. If the compressor kicks on, we'll come back when it's over. But now there's no danger now that I've got the nut on the top. This spring really has nowhere to go. It's captive by this upper mount. Looking down there, it looks like it's going to line up pretty good. Let's see. Okay, now I'm going to take my reconditioned strut here and put it up through the bottom, and then I'm going to fasten the nuts up through the body, and then I'll tighten the top ones first. Now I already know that I can have this in either direction because I have tried to switch this around to see if the noise would change or go away before during my diagnosis. So if you go to put these in, it doesn't matter if you're this or 180 the other way. Now, if the nuts are started, I'm going to run them down. Okay, as I said earlier that I did not do, I'm going to go over to the other side and I'm going to lift that wheel up. All I need to do is get it up off the ground so I can take tension off the stabilizer bar. All right, as you can see, we got a little ways to go to get these two to line up. Now I'm going to use the floor jack, a different one this time, to try and raise the strut up and compress the spring. It can get dicey. In fact, this part is, well, a little bit dangerous, but I'm going to get these two about the same height. I'm going to move the jack back and forth until I get that to line up. Once I get the bolt through here, I'm home free, but it'll take a little bit of doing to get to that point. I want you to work safe. Be real careful, because all I really need to do is get this started. So this time, instead of catching the edge of this, I'm going to catch it right in the center of the jack, or maybe a little off, just so that I can get the bolt started. Because as you can see, before I put any tension on this, if I put this bolt through here, it's going to catch on the edge, but it's going to go far enough through to where I'll be able to start it. Hopefully you can see with my little light here is I'm going to keep moving this back and forth until I can make those as flush as I possibly can, and then I'll start hammering the bolt through. So it's kind of a tricky operation, but that's what I'm doing over here. Nailed it. Now I can just let the tension off the jack. Knock it through the rest of the way. Okay, so this time, rather than going through the front and loosening the nut, I'm going to hold the nut and tighten the bolt. Well, okay then, let's take it for a drive and see how we did. This time I'm going to put you in the back right by the upper strut mount. That way you can hear if there's any noise at all. Well, okay, I am pleased with that result. I'm going to say that any noise that you probably heard was that rear quarter panel piece was actually sitting on top of the camera. That seat belt goes through it and it's too difficult to get out. All it needs to be is out of the way. I'm going to say that any noise that you heard was either the camera lens tapping around or anything, because I didn't hear anything near the noise that I heard when I initially drove the vehicle. And as far as the diagnosis goes, I use those same methods that I showed in the suspension noise video, and also I pulled on a stabilizer bar as I did in the Honda Element video. I'll post links to both of those down in the description so that you can check those out should you so desire. But moving things around, I didn't hear anything. I kept saying it sounds like the top of the strut. And in order to confirm that, I had to take the whole back end of the car apart and basically listen to it while I was driving and say, aha. And then as I said, I'd actually taken the strut out, switched it around 180 degrees, put it back up in there to see if the noise would change, and it actually got a little worse. And that was due to this guy right here, which, as you can see, looks like it's been beating around on the inside of this for some time. I try to stick with as much OE as I possibly can, but customers have, obvious cost concerns, things like that. They've got a budget. So I try to do what I can to work within that and still get a result. And that takes a lot of trial and error and experience. Hopefully you can learn from mine, and should you want to do things differently on your own, feel free. Just be real careful around those springs. Now the rear springs, like I said, they don't hold as much weight, they don't have as much tension on them as front springs do. Because I'll tell you, those front springs, oh man, those can hurt you real bad. Not that these can't. But anyway, I'm gonna put the back of this thing together. That would just make this video really long if I showed all that work. So I'm gonna save that for another day and just put this back together, and we'll close this one out. I would ask that if you have automotive questions, you head over to my website at EricTheCarGuy.com and type in a couple of keywords into our search function that we have there. It's a database consisting of many questions, thousands actually, that I and many others have answered. So there's quite a possibility you'll get an answer right then and there. Also, you can type in your check engine light codes. We've got a full listing of OBD2 codes and some OBD1 codes, and we're constantly making that thing better every day. So that's where I suggest you go. You can also connect with me on Google+, Facebook, and Twitter, and if you can't get an answer via that search function, you can always sign up for our forum. It's free to sign up for. All you need is an email address. And I will close with, be safe, have fun, and of course, stay dirty, and keep your struts and stuff quiet. See you next time.